Howdy, folks, and welcome to Basic Business Advice. This is Chris White, and I'm here with Tyler Needing, Jordan Stoltzfus, and Amanda Humphrey. Amanda, you are the Junior Chief Financial Officer at Holmes Oil, which is a local and regional oil distribution company. Here, you actually work for, right now, the Burgett family, which our Chief Financial Officer here at the firm, Irene, is technically your boss. We don't let her say that, but
right.
Yes.
I mean, I let her. She can say whatever she wants.
But her and Jeremy, you work for. You also are very well connected to most of the people on our teams through CrossFit, through being a part of the community, through being a former treasurer here at the local school district. Yeah. But we'll get into some details about your kind of career and where you've been. But we really want to talk to you today about leadership, coaching, team development, the things that are kind of surrounding your experience in that area. Because as we've said before, the purpose of the podcast, if for any new listeners out there, is we're trying to talk to businesses about basic advice of how they can address problems, address issues, maybe take their stuff to the next step. And so we're going to foray across maybe a couple different domains of your knowledge base, because you have a broad knowledge base of different areas. And so Jordan, I think you're going to kick us off with the first question.
Yeah,
today.
So you just got done doing a mastermind talking about the meaninglessness of work. And so I asked you, sitting here, what's the most meaningful job you've had? And you said coaching and teaching people. So I'm curious, what's like, if you think about, okay, this was my defining moment as a coach, as a teacher, this is going to stick with me and has shaped how I do leadership, how I work. What is that? Is there like one thing that you always kind of go back to?
I wouldn't say there's like one defining moment, but it was just the process of building relationships with my players. So I was a volleyball coach. The effort, the intentionality. Like I think a lot of people think, oh, you're just coaching. You teach them the game and go play, you know. I think this community might actually have a little bit of a better handle than a lot of communities because, you know, Highland is so successful, but you know, it takes a lot more than that. And it's all about relationship building. And that's kind of what I viewed, you know, yes, we wanted to win volleyball games. Sports don't last forever. High school sports, not many of them are going past that. And so being intentional about building those relationships and impacting young women. I did not have a real strong female in my life. My coaches were always males. So like I didn't have like a female mentor growing up. And so I definitely took that to heart, and watching those relationships build from, you know, I didn't know these kids at Hoover. I mean, there were 1,600 kids in the high school. So my volleyball players, I didn't have them in class. So the first time I met them was in the gym. So from going to meeting them, having no idea who they were, to when these girls would then come into my classroom to eat lunch because they just wanted to be a team. They wanted to be together and they wanted to talk life. Like that is when I'm like, yes, I'm doing something. This is my purpose. And to see those relationships build and to see them then work on their relationships with each other, I think is kind of when it's like, you know, there's goodness here. And to even after that, you know, like I haven't been at Hoover for 4 years now. And there are still players that I talk with all the time, players that I go watch them play their college sport. That's not volleyball, right? They're playing basketball in college. And yet I'm going to watch them and support them because like those are some lasting relationships and they're still coming to me to talk about things, needing that advice. And I think, you know, there's just something deeper when you're able to do something like that.
It's interesting because you talked about going from, and I think you skipped over something that I would like to focus on, meeting them, and then they start showing up and being part of just things outside of the sport and part of life. And looking, there's a bit of a gap there, though, between that first time you meet them and the time they start showing up. How did you develop that interpersonal relationship that through coaching? How did you develop that trust and leadership with them?
I think a lot of it is meeting them where they are. And I will say those relationships didn't happen with every kid on the team. Like, not every kid was coming to my classroom. Not every kid was drinking the Kool-Aid. But like I said, it was about being intentional, getting to know them, getting to know what makes them tick, and letting them know, like, well, yes, I want to win volleyball matches. I don't believe that's the only reason I'm here. And me just being very transparent about my job as a leader in your life is to teach you about life and all of the different things that sport can teach you, how we can apply it different ways, and just, kind of bridging that gap for them and letting them know that there is more to life than winning, than being successful. And yes, we want those things, but what can we learn from those things? And it's just picking up on the little nuggets. And there were some girls, I'll fully honest, I wasn't able to connect with. It was hard for me to connect with, whether they were kind girls, right? If they were the mean girl. My natural inclination to a mean girl is to pull her ponytail. That's what I want to do,
I don't think you can do that as a coach.
Typically,
maybe as a player.
It's frowned upon typically. I definitely had those feelings. So, going outside myself there and saying, okay, how do I still connect with this kid and let them know that I care, that even though I can't find enjoyment out of the things that she does, what can I do? And that did take time. It took, getting together outside of the gym, not just doing volleyball stuff, going out and going bowling together and, asking questions about the school day. And we would always have on Mondays, we would have like a debrief session of our weekends and something going on in school. What do we need to share about? Like, it's not just about volleyball. Like, we are on a team that's working toward a common goal, and we know that there are other things that impact this goal. And so, and again, that did just take time. Like, and especially that first year, and I'll just talk about my experience at Hoover. That first year, like, I was battling some demons from the previous coach, right? There were some foundations laid, and you have to handle that carefully. It's very delicate, and I didn't want to completely discredit what the former coach had been doing or been teaching. So like, if I instructed something differently, it's like, okay, well, I'm not saying she was wrong. This is, the way I see it, and this is why we're going to do it this way. And just, it was a learning process for me. I would say really by year 3 was when you start to kind of feel those things all gel, and everyone has drank the Kool-Aid in some way. Like, even if they fully haven't, like, they're at least semi-invested, not because of me, but because of their teammates.
Okay, there's like 15 things that you said that I want to unpack so much of that. Yeah. The first thing I need to do, though, is I need to go back and amend something. It's Amanda Heller. Oh. And that is something mentally that I just caught up with in my mind, because I met her as Amanda Humphrey.
You did.
And you got married 4 months ago?
4 months ago, yes.
Yeah, so my brain has not caught up to that.
So, I think I introduced her as Amanda Humphrey at GapCon also. So I would also like to go back to November.
We're time traveling back. That. We're amending and correcting.
So I'll actually...
Shout out Chad Heller.
Yes, Chad. Legally, I still am Amanda Humphrey.
Oh, fantastic. So, I don't
we don't feel bad then.
Yeah. We'll scrap this whole thing.
Yep. So socially, I'm Amanda Heller.
Yeah.
So it's all good. I go by both, kind of.
So apart from the nuances of your last name, there's so much to unpack there. And Jordan and Tyler, feel free to jump in at any point in time. But I think you highlight so much of somebody who's being brought into a leadership position, and they're taking over in the footsteps of somebody else. That the new kid, the new leader mentality. I've seen so many people be tempted in that situation that I'm going to exercise authority to try to control because of the insecurities they feel and stepping into that and the length of time. When you were addressing that, when you saw that, and you've led several teams where you've stepped in the place of somebody else, whether that's in the team sports ball world or even when you were treasurer, you stepped in the shoes of a prior treasurer. And I think you inherited a team that came with them. How do you address, or what advice do you have about addressing for that, for a leader who's stepping in where somebody else has just left, some sort of narrative behind them?
I think it's slightly different between the two playing fields, like between sports and work, slightly. For sports, I think, there are different coaching mentalities and philosophies, and I do believe there are different levels of expertise when it comes to technical skills.
I mean, not every coach knows everything they're talking about all the time.
Especially in high school sports.
Oh, should we start listing names? No.
And so I think still respecting, what they built, what they had done, whether there was like true winning success or not, they clearly made a commitment, and to completely just sweep that under the rug, I think, is unprofessional and disrespectful. But you are trying to build your own program and put your own name on it. And with kids, I think they need to see that. Kids are so impressionable, and, you are trying to win games, and you do need to pass volleyball a certain way. And this is the way I believe it needs to be done, so this is the way you need to do it. So there is some of that authority that does come in where you do have to just take control, and this is the way I'm going to do it. I think in the workplace is slightly different, just because, like you mentioned, Chris, when I stepped in to being treasurer at East Holmes, I had 2 employees that were hired by the previous treasurer that had their own way of doing things, that had, again, same thing, they had their own philosophies. But with adults, I think the dynamic is a lot different. Adults are set in their ways. They're not easy to mold, I don't think.
No.
Right? They're not a 16 or 17-year-old girl that's like, please show me everything.
Right.
There's some resistance there. And I tried. I mean, I was able to quickly see, I want to change this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And, I was fortunate to train alongside the treasurer at the time, and to just bounce a lot of ideas off of her. And, her advice was, don't try and change everything at once. There are absolutely things that need to be changed. Because she was only there for a year. So she came in to take over for the treasurer prior to that. And there was a lot more, we'll just say, upheaval with that transition than it was from me to her, or from her to me. And, her advice was, just give it time, see how it works. And that's what I'm trying to do at Holmes Oil now too, is observe and, okay, what's working well? What do we do really well here? What's something, I would like to change? What are all the pain points, and what are the most important ones to be addressing? How will people respond to that? And kind of just start having even just conversations to see what everyone's reactions are. I think we can do that in the workplace. I'm not going to ask a team of 16 and 17-year-olds, what's the problem? I'm not going to do that, so that's why I do think those are different. But
I think you highlighted something key too. It's like, as a coach, and you see this right now in the NFL, there's a lot of coaches getting fired and a lot of coaches getting hired. And when you come in and get hired in the sports world, you got to succeed, or your leash is about that long and you're going to get out. So if you get in there and say, hey, what's going on? I'm going to observe for a while. That leash is going to get real short real quick. Right. But, in the workplace, typically the leash is a little bit longer. Obviously, you have to be successful, but you have some time to kind of observe that and it's because people are set in their ways. And like you said, it's a little different, just a little different playing field, I think. So I think you highlighted that well. I think you're right.
So you are experienced in multiple tracks now in coming in to the path somebody else has laid down. And you've talked about change, and don't try and boil the whole ocean at the same time, take it out. And how do you prioritize that? How do you think about change? And what do you, where do you look when you're like, this is the most important thing to change here? And you talked about pain points, and I don't know if that leads into that, but how do you think about that?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Like looking at the pain points, where are we struggling the most? What's the most challenging thing for us to get done? Or like what's taking up a lot of our time that really shouldn't? And is there opportunity here to become more efficient. And also looking at the implementation or the implications of the change. How many people are going to be impacted by this? And is it going to be very hard for them to make that change, or is it going to be relatively easy, like a couple days and they'll have it and we're moving forward? I feel like I'm in a unique position at Holmes Oil is, the previous owners are still working there. And so as we're making changes,
that has a wrinkle to it.
It does. And it's, again, being respectful of that and not wanting to just bulldoze over things or like people have spent their lives building something and I'm going to swoop in here and say, I'm going to do it better. Like,
But again, they hired you for a reason, right? I agree. You can't come in and just bulldoze, but they hired you because you have a specific skill set to do well at something, right?
I think so. Yes. I know. I think it's still just delicate. I mean, especially when you're in a small business, I think, we have 13 employees at Holmes Oil. And so we are very closely connected. But I think for me in implementing some of the things, it's like, how can I communicate this to the entire team? That this is where we're going and it's going to be good. There'll be a slight learning curve, but it's really not that hard. And just that reassurance that I will be here to support you in this. And it's going to make your life easier.
I think it's interesting because we've been through our own changes internally over the last 13 years, some of them big, some of them small. It strikes me that what you're describing with the fresh set of eyes coming into whether it's a team or an organization, whatever it is, to see the weak points, to see what can be addressed, is there is no system that any of us create that is static, that is just always going to be set it, forget it, and it's never going to have to change. But yet in leadership, we have to work with people who rely on systems to not change. They rely on it to be successful, and they rely on winning tactics, maybe on a team or a procedure that's like, this is how we've done it and this is how other people are affected by it. It just strikes me that is a tension at play that can really make your job hard when you're coming in to take over something. If you're intellectually honest enough to say things have to change, but that means people have to change, you all of a sudden got into a really messy area. Because it's easy to say this system can change like this and put it up on the whiteboard. But then when you put the people in there, super messy.
People are messy. They are.
But that's so many people in leadership. We work with people. Even somebody who has a manufacturing, where they're industrial, friend of ours, Jason, who was here this morning and listened to you and coaches at the gym, and lots of widgets being turned at New Camp, lots of bolts being put in right places, lots of walls being put on trailers in the right way. But fundamentally, it's still people.
Right.
And investing in people, it always gets messy.
Always.
So, Tyler, you've been real quiet.
Yeah, I've been doing what you were talking about, where I'm just kind of sitting back for a little bit and learning. And,
the leash is getting short.
Yeah, the leash is getting short.
Now is your time.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about I did not play any athletic balls in school. But I was in band.
Okay.
I was in band my entire. I got you, huh?
I'm so proud.
Yeah,
so proud.
Wow.
Anyway, but I was in band for my entire as long as I could in school, and I was thinking about how cool it is that you've transitioned coaching from coaching and teaching to working at a bigger company, doing big things. But really that value kind of stays the same of like you're investing in people, and how nice it is that you do have a little bit of time where you're junior, where you're building those relationships. So when you do take over as head coach, you have that relationship built with them. And yeah, I was that way in band. And when I was in band, every free minute I had, I was in the band room because I had a relationship with them and I trusted them, and they invested in me, and I believed pretty much anything they would tell me because we had that repertoire, you know.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess that's not really a question, but I just think that's such a cool transition to see.
You want to talk about challenge for kids? I mean, sports is one thing. We're switching from one coach to another. And I think we've seen one of the smoother transitions with Dave Schlaball retiring and Brady taking over, because Brady was engaged before and Dave's still engaged now. And so there's nice when there's good overlap. Now, I don't know the inner workings of them, if they argue about, over video cuts or whatever that's going on. But you talk about the kind of tribal mentality that people get about leaders. Did you have any director leave and get a new director when you were in school? Because those kids,
Yeah.
those people in the arts, when their director leaves and a new director comes in, it's like a mutiny.
Yeah. There's I had an interesting experience because mine it was actually co-directors and they were married. So it was a really cool dynamic though, because there was always like a safe place for the girls, always a safe place for the guys, and there was always this like parent mentality where they were more like a co-working type thing, instead of like boss or leader. It was a cool experience. But when they left, it was super messy because they had spent a very long amount of time where they were really close with the kids. There was band directors in the past, like when my sisters were there was a couple that were like sort of dictator driven. So when they left, everyone was super pumped. But there was also like, I know that sounds bad. They don't have social media because they're like 85 years old, but so I'm not worried about them hearing this. But yeah, definitely. Like I feel like when they left, it was probably crazy, and I'm sure it's the same way at companies where people are set in their ways for so long. That's funny you said that because I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm sure it's similar with choir and sports.
I was in between. I didn't have anybody leave, so I didn't have to worry about it. But Amanda, back to talking to you about this stuff, and I apologize that I took that rabbit trail and just grabbed it. Have you had to clear the deck? Have you had to move somebody out? And I don't know, students are harder because it's a public school. But have you had to encounter somebody who was so entrenched with the way it was that they just weren't going to fit for the vision you had for what was going to be?
Yes. I would say both in coaching and in the workplace. Like you identify those individuals that are not buying in, that do not believe you are the leader that they need. And I think from a coaching perspective, and even working, setting clear expectations is going to help alleviate some of that animosity and hostility. I was very clear with my players. The best 6 kids are going to play, and I don't care who you are, and I don't care how old you are. Yeah. My job is to put us in a position to win. When it comes to volleyball X's and O's, that's my job. And so I'd be very clear about that. And, and I still had challenges on those things. And so setting those expectations for the girls, for the parents, of things that I'm willing to talk about, things I'm not willing to talk about. And following up with that, like I would have individual meetings with all of my girls a couple times throughout the year to kind of just talk about where they were, what was going on, and allow them an opportunity to ask questions too. And it was always funny to me. Most of the girls responded to that very well. And, there were always a couple that were like, well, I just don't understand why I'm not playing. Like, have you not seen yourself in practice? Have you not, seen your performance level? I've got film to show you. Let's watch it, and being able to point out those things.
But there's this thing that happens, I think, sometimes is people think they're more talented than they are.
Absolutely.
And I've been victim to that. And I've, especially earlier on in high school, like I felt like I should have been playing more. And then in hindsight, you look at it a couple of years later and like, coach was right. Coach had it, and maybe you see that in hindsight, but how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those players who are like, I need to be playing? Sorry, hit the table. But what do you do?
Yeah. And that's why, we would do a lot of drills within practice that were easily measurable. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you are a defensive player, if you are someone that is only going to play in the back row, you better be getting to balls on defense that no one else gets to. I would film practices, and then I could show you. You didn't run that ball down. She did. You know, like, and I would just have that evidence to support that. Or, you know, your attitude is straight trash. And regardless of how good you are, you're a cancer to the team. Because when you get in your head, you know, you impact everyone else on the floor. And again, I can measure that. I can show that. And so that, while it was uncomfortable to have those conversations, I think ultimately, hopefully, those young women like can take that into adulthood and know, like, hey, I might have these tough conversations in the workplace too. And if I'm not doing my job, my boss is going to let me know. And I can't expect to get a raise if I'm not doing my job well. In the workplace, I think too, having clear expectations, and this is probably an area, and I'll speak to my time at East Holmes, was an area that I probably could have done better with. I think being a younger leader, when you are younger than your employees, can be challenging. Especially when they were hired by your predecessor.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't think I was equipped, nor was I fully aware of what all could come with that. I took over as treasurer in February of 2020. Oh, I bang the table. So February of 2020, and we all know what happened in March of 2020.
Right.
COVID hit, school shut down. And here I am a month into being the actual treasurer. Yes, I had been there since the previous June as the assistant. So I was not prepared for what all that would look like. And so looking back, I would absolutely do things differently. I thought I had set expectations and had been clear about that. I was not. And, you know, I then had to kind of backtrack and try to reel some things in, you know. And that was hard. That was challenging. And, you know, when we deal with those things, sometimes we then, you know, it kind of ripples throughout the workplace, and then everyone's dealing with it. And I think we all know that COVID just created a time when we were all just trying to survive. And so I feel like I couldn't find my way as a leader right away as a treasurer, because we were trying to survive COVID and trying to figure out a way to educate kids, you know, all while money's still moving and I'm having to manage all that and all that comes with that. And so now, like, as I look back, like you were saying, Jordan, like I can reflect back and see, like, what would I have done differently? I think just having those open lines of communication and having the confidence as a leader, even if you are younger, and that's where I struggled. I was insecure. Having that confidence in that the board hired me to do a job and they believe in me. So I better latch on to that and believe in myself and know that I will have their support to do what I need to do here.
Man, again, there's like 15 things I want to jump on with everything that you just said there. But do you guys have anything? Because I do want to ask one last follow-up question, but if you guys are good. Okay, good. So with the idea, going back to stepping in and what you just talked about, sometimes you're thrown into a position, or you're in a position and thrown into a whole new circumstance inside that position. Have you ever had to deal with somebody's going to pull back the curtain and see, I don't know what I'm doing here?
Every day.
Because I see so many new leaders, you know, I think the formal term is imposter syndrome. You know, I see so many new leaders that struggle to feel like they belong or feel like they're just BSing it and somebody's going to call them on it and that's going to be the end of their career. You know, you've had to step into multiple positions. How do you address that? How would you recommend, if you don't want to share your personal therapy, how would you recommend somebody who is in leadership to think through that process?
I try to be very honest with myself and with others of who I am. And I don't I've been accused actually of not taking like ownership or being proud of what I've done. And I'm like, because in reality, I don't think it's a big deal. And it's not to say like what I do or, you know, I haven't been successful, but it's trying to keep myself humble. Like, you know, I talked about it earlier. Like, I don't think I've earned a lot of this. I think I've been blessed with a lot of gifts and talents that I have been able to foster and use. But at the end of the day, I don't believe I've earned that. And so, you know, I've felt that at East Holmes. Like, I was probably one of the youngest treasurers in the state of Ohio at 34 years old. I think I was.
We were just going to be okay with 30.
Oh, I'll take it. You know, and even with Eric Bune being superintendent, he's probably one of the youngest superintendents in the state of Ohio. So you have a leadership team being led by two young people. Like, and I would look at the board, I'm like, clearly they believe in us. You know, I just tried to be very honest with them. And luckily East Holmes at the time had a great board, now has a great board. And just business-minded people and, you know, very supportive of the process, knowing, you know, they made it very clear, like they could have hired someone with more experience than me. Absolutely. I had 0 treasurer experience. Yeah, I have finance experience. I have education, never been a treasurer. They could have hired someone that was a treasurer to manage that budget. But they chose me because of who I am as a person, who I am as a worker. And, you know, when you hear that, like that gives you a lot of hope, I guess. But then a lot of courage too, to be honest to who you are and to know like they believe in me. So I can be honest with them. If they ask me a question, I can tell them, yeah, I know the answer to that and I'll give you the answer. Or I don't know about that. There is stuff I don't know, but I'm going to find you the answer from people that do know. And I think it's really just about being real and not necessarily always faking it till you make it. I think we do need that sometimes.
Sure.
You know, I think that is a battle sometimes, but you know, also just knowing when to say, I don't know. And that doesn't mean I don't belong. It doesn't mean I don't fit or I, you know, shouldn't be here. It just means I have an opportunity to grow and learn more. And I think that shows our coworkers, our employees, like we're all growing. We're all a work in process. So let's be true to who we are and, you know, not BS our way through something. And if we can all learn to be humble and we can be humble with ourselves, I think that creates some vulnerability within the workplace that allows you to connect at a deeper level.
That's really good.
I was hoping for the secret sauce to this is how you get over imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
That was a good answer, but I'm still looking for that magic bullet.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's a good podcast on it somewhere.
Yeah, this is it. This is that podcast. So, no, Amanda, thank you so much for this. Tyler will have a video up of Amanda's mastermind here in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's usually about our turnaround. Yeah.
So if you want to look at the basic business advice on YouTube, you can see Amanda's mastermind, which was fantastic this morning. She, in fairness, did announce she was a little bit nervous.
A lot bit.
She did a fantastic job
She did great.
the whole time. And then this podcast actually might come out about the same time.
Yeah, we put them both out about the last week of the month.
Yep. So if you're listening to the podcast, go check out the mastermind as well. So Amanda, thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, a couple announcements. We are 9 months away from the next GapCon. So we're looking at the beginning of November. So if you joined us last year or you heard us talk about it last year and you want to join us this year, keep your eyes out for that. We'll be starting to talk more and more about that as it comes up. And if you're local to the Holmes County area, we are now hosting with Rise and Eques and local restaurant Cider Press, which I happen to own, a networking event. And we'd love to hear from you because at that networking event, Tyler's actually got the podcast set up to talk one-on-one with anybody who comes to the event and ask them business questions. So he ends up talking for 2 hours and eating pulled pork nachos. And
I've got it made. They bring it straight to the table. I basically don't get up, and Chris just keeps delivering people
that's
to
right.
talk to.
So if you're listening to this and you're local to Holmes County, or you want to come to Holmes County, just keep an eye out for that. Olivia usually posts updates about when our next event is going to be. So it's twice a month right now.
Second and fourth Thursday.
Second and fourth Thursday
Yep.
of the month. So, which means by the time this comes out, you may be right up against the wire of
Yep.
being at the next one. So, but keep an eye out that. And the last thing I have to say is that Jordan is fully embraced a new role inside the entity of, Eques and Black Box Consulting. Jordan, what is Black Box real quick? Give the listeners a heads up about that.
Short answer is we create growth strategies for industry shakers and world changers. So we help cool companies grow in really cool and aggressive ways.
Awesome. Yes. So
Blackbox.consulting. That's BLKbox.consulting.
Yep. You can see that the new site just went live. And
Yeah,
so they're
it's
going to
fun.
be working on that. He's not going anywhere, but he's definitely shifting some responsibilities. So on behalf of Tyler, Jordan, and Amanda, thanks for listening. Have a great day.